Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call today's Thursday, June 27th meeting of the Missoula Board of County Commissioners to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to kick things off, we do have a public announcement. We have a proclamation June 19th as Juneteenth National Freedom Day. Commissioner Slotnick.
Whereas news of the end of slavery did not reach frontier areas of the United States, and in particular the southwestern states, for more than 2 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation of January 1, 1863, and months after the conclusion of the Civil War, and on June 19, 1865, Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War had ended and that the enslaved were free. And African Americans who had been slaves in the Southwest celebrated June 19th, commonly known as Juneteenth Independence Day, as the anniversary of their emancipation. And African Americans from the Southwest and across the country continued the tradition of Juneteenth Independence Day as inspiration and encouragement for future generations. And for more than 150 years, Juneteenth Independence Day celebrations have been held to honor African American freedom while encouraging self-development, respect, and dignity for all people. And although Juneteenth Independence Day is beginning to be recognized as a national and even global event, the history behind the celebration should not be forgotten, and the faith and strength of character demonstrated by former slaves remains an example for all people of the United States, regardless of background, religion, or race. And the character demonstrated by former slaves should inspire us in this country to give thanks for the freedom won by so many people in all nations and to strive for the goals of bringing freedom and democracy to people of other countries, no matter what their race or religion. Therefore, be it resolved, Missoula County and the City of Missoula do hereby proclaim the 19th of June as Juneteenth Independence Day, to commemorate African American emancipation from slavery, to celebrate the freedom won by people in many countries, and to rededicate ourselves to the cause of liberty.
Thank you. The only other announcement I'll make is that on Monday, July 1st, in this very room at 3:30 p.m., we will be swearing into office Juanita Vero, who happened to just walk in the room, and she will be taking the place and filling out the term of Cola Rowley. So, is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda? Seeing none, the claims list for June 6th through June 19th. These are claims received by the Commissioner's Office, total $5,383,482.19. And as we so often mention, you can drill down into what these specific claims are by accessing the electronic packet for today's meeting. We have one public hearing today. This is on the Lolo Creek Properties boundary line proposed relocation, and we will begin with a staff report from Jamie Erbacher.
Thank you, Dave. So this is a request from Al Zapata of Lolo Creek Properties, LLC. He is represented today by James Sage of Missoula Engineering, and they're proposing to use the boundary line relocation exemption to the Montana Subdivision and Plating Act. Typically, boundary line relocations can be approved administratively. However, this involves the Laurent Commercial Development Park. And because of this, we felt that this should be heard by the Board of County Commissioners. So on your screen, you'll see the current lot configuration, which does consist of 3 parcels, one small triangular piece, a almost square piece in the center, and then a trapezoidal larger parcel on the west side. The relocation, as you see on the screen, will result in 3 new lot configurations. The screen also represents the Laurent Commercial Development Park and how it will be situated within those new lot lines. The Laurent Commercial Development Park was for 38 units and 7 buildings. The proposed lot configuration will result in 4 Hobbit-style homes, all in one building, to be located on Parcel 3A and the remaining 34 units on Parcel 3B. Parcel 4 will eventually be developed with multifamily and mixed-use developments. The approval was subject to 11 conditions. Staff reviewed reviewed the buildings for lease or rent proposal and noted that no modifications to the findings of fact or conclusions of law have occurred, and therefore no new conditions of approval are necessary for that development. Based on this, staff is not going to require a new public hearing for the buildings for lease or rent project. So now backing up a little bit, Lolo Creek Properties was acquired, Lot 4 of COS 2876 in April of 2019, and Stanley Hendrickson purchased Lot 3 of COS 2876 and the parcel described in Book R, page 128 in 2015. All three properties are unzoned. The 2002 Lolo Regional Plan recommends light industrial commercial for this property. The properties are all located outside of the designated floodplain. So we have gone through and we've reviewed the evasion criteria for the boundary line relocation and found that the application triggered 6 of them. I have them on the screen, but I'll just kind of briefly go over them. Al is a developer, and Stan Hendrickson owns multiple properties, some of which include gravel pits currently in operation. Al purchased Lot 4 within the last 2 years and has met with the Community and Planning Services staff regarding future development and subdivision of Parcel 4 of COS 2876. Al has filed several other exemptions in Missoula County and within the city limits. However, none of them have involved these tracts. The proposed Lawrence Commercial Development Park, in combination with the boundary line relocation, will have common roads, utilities, and shared parking. The boundary line relocation will simply allow for individual ownership of the 4 Hobbit-style homes. The last evasion criteria is related to the growth policy. The proposed division is not incompatible with the 2002 Regional Lolo Plan. The property was designated as light industrial commercial because at the time it was seen as a difficult site to develop with residential uses. The proposed division will result in lots that are intended to be used for residential and mixed-use development. However, Objective 5.4 of the county growth policy encourages the reuse of former industrial sites and previously developed underutilized parcels of land to revitalize blighted areas. Developing the subject property with an industrial use as suggested by the plan would place industrial uses next to a school and in a residential and commercial setting. As noted in the Lawrence Commercial Park staff report, residential uses may be permissible if built on the flat portions of the gravel pit or if a geotechnical analysis shows building residential buildings into or onto a hillside is acceptable. So with the Lawrence Commercial Park, they're doing that geotech, and so therefore we are finding that this site can be reused for residential purposes. None of the general review criteria for rebuttable presumptions were triggered with the request, and in the end, the applicant is starting with 3 parcels and ending with 3 parcels, none of which could be further subdivided unless going through a formal review process. So based on these facts and the additional facts contained in the staff report, staff does not find that the applicant is attempting to evade subdivision review and is recommending approval of the request.
Thank you. Would the applicant or applicant's representative like to make any comments?
James Sage with Missoula Engineering. Just like to say thank you to CAPS and staff for preparing the report and working with us on this whole process of going through the boundary line adjustment. We're here to answer any questions that you may have and understand that the boundary line lot lines are somewhat atypical to what you would normally see within a subdivision, but due to the site topography and other surrounding developments, it's what's driving that.
Questions?
Could you describe kind of what's changed kind of contextually from 2002 to now so that residential makes more sense than it did when that growth policy was adopted in 2002?
Yeah, so I think as far as what's changed, I'm not sure that anything is necessarily changed, but I think that the use of the site is best served, and there's been some surrounding developments that would support, common facilities such as Lola Peak Brewery across the street. And I guess we feel like the best use of this site, being in close proximity to the school, would be for residential, primarily for multifamily, which is technically considered commercial use within tax code. So that's kind of the reference that we were going through. This tract through this BLR would be acquired by one company and manage this property to create housing. Does that help answer your question?
So
I'm just speculating that maybe this land use designation was overlaying on this parcel the way it was because it was a gravel pit and no one had necessarily a vision for more beyond that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that's correct, based on what I was reading in the growth policy on the 2002 regional plan, that because it was an old gravel pit, that's why they designated it as light industrial commercial. And at that time, I don't think anybody was really thinking of housing, so they just went with the existing land use that was on site.
If you yeah, that was a good answer. If you look at the surrounding developments, residential along Ridgeway, there's a large subdivision, and to the north, adjacent to the brewery, there's a fairly large residential development as well. Primarily, all the commercial is concentrated along Highway 93 on the frontage.
I'm thrilled to see an old gravel pit become housing.
Thanks. Yeah, in 2002, they had not fully embraced the Hobbit aspects of this particular site.
The brewery wasn't there yet either.
So this is a public hearing. Is there any public comment on this this item before us? I'm not getting any takers out there. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Is there are additional questions or a motion to be had?
I would move that the request by Lolo Creek Properties LLC to utilize the boundary line relocation exemption to the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act in accordance with MCA 76-3-2071A be approved.
I will second that. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. Is there any other business to come before the commission today? Seeing none, we will be adjourned in 15 minutes.